In Ultimatum League, we are going to be given a choice. We can either take the easy road out, accomplish a small task, and take our pittance. Or we can push ourselves even further than we thought possible, reach for the stars, and reap the bountiful rewards that we know are owed to us. Now, if you're anything like me, you're most likely going to want to go for the second option. And to do that, we are going to need a powerful build, one that is able to handle everything in the game without breaking the budget. Between massive overhauls of the basic loot tables and reworks of almost every single league that you can think of, on top of the Atlas trees that were added to the game in 3.13, Ultimatum League has a ton to explore. So now that we know what we're up against, let's take a look at today's build. Now, as always, I'm going to be giving you 5 powerful league start options so that you can choose the one that looks like it's best suited for your needs. This time around, there are going to be a few classic builds that have been on this list before, however, there are also a few newcomers. My goal for these league start videos is to provide you every single bit of information that you need to have a successful league start. These videos will include complete leveling information, as well as full path of buildings with leveling trees, multiple gear sets, frequently asked questions and notes, as well as anything else that you might need. If you have any further questions that isn't answered in either of these places, you can either come and ask me live on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/bigducks, or you can come and join my Discord and ask for help from my community. Both of these are linked in the description. The build that we're going to be talking about today is the Creeping Frost Occultist. This is a classic league start build that I have been recommending for quite some time. The reason being is that this build is absolutely insanely easy for a newer returning player to get into. It doesn't require any specialty items, no expensive gear, is very easy to play, and can handle all of the content in the game. Now, this build focuses on cold damage over time, and because of that, we're choosing the Occultist Ascendancy. This Ascendancy is going to provide us a massive damage and defensive boost through cold damage over time, immunity to stun, allowing us to apply additional curses to our enemies, as well as reducing regeneration of nearby enemies. This has massive synergy with all of the abilities that we use for this build, and allows us to be an overall very, very powerful league starter. Creeping Frost in and of itself is a cold damage over time ability that shoots out a projectile and leaves a cold damage zone on the ground. We also utilize the ability Cold Snap, and we do use this as more of a utility ability, however it does do some damage on its own. These two abilities combined with a few utility abilities allow us to massively slow enemies and keep us extremely safe while doing damage. Now, this build in particular is mainly suited for new players, returning players, or people who want a very smooth and easy league start. It's excellent for clearing, and it is very good at overcoming bosses. However, I do want you to keep in mind that bossing itself is not extremely quick on this build. The single target damage is not the best out there, however, it does have a very easy time handling the bosses themselves. As we stack so much chill effectiveness, bosses essentially move in slow motion, and you can consider it like they're on easy mode. So while it doesn't kill bosses faster than some other builds, it definitely makes the fight significantly easier than most others. So if all of that sounds good to you, then keep watching. However, if that doesn't sound like it's up your alley when it comes to a league start video, check out this playlist that's going to be showing up in the top right corner now. There are 4 other builds that may be more suited to your needs if this one didn't really do it for you. But now that you've gotten an idea of what we're getting into, let's jump into game and take a little bit of a closer look. Hey guys, Big Ducks here, and welcome back to the channel. Now remember, if you're enjoying this content, make sure that you like this video so that YouTube knows to recommend you more of it. Also, over 75% of you are still not subscribed to this YouTube channel, so if you're enjoying my particular style of content, make sure that you subscribe so that these videos will show right up in your feed. Now without further ado, let's get back into the guide. Alright boys, so this is the Creeping Frost Occultist, one of the classic league start builds that I've been pushing for quite a few leagues now. Now why have I been pushing this build? It is very cheap, it is very easy to play, doesn't require any specialty gear, SSF friendly, slows bosses down to a crawl, and is excellent for clearing all the way through the entire game. If you're a newer returning player, this is the one that I always suggest to you to play to get yourself caught up to speed so that you have an easy time going into it and you don't have to worry about a thing. It can easily clear the entire campaign, it's very straightforward, no crazy mechanics, nothing special going on here, just a really solid, good, friendly build. So let's talk about the skills a little bit. So the main ability of this build is, of course, Creeping Frost. This is a cold damage over time ability. Now the way that this works is it shoots out a projectile and then it's going to leave a cold damage effect on the ground. This cold damage effect is what actually is going to be doing our damage. The little hit that you see here from these Creeping Frosts is not the main portion of the damage. This build does damage over time. One thing that is cool about Creeping Frost is that enemies that are nearby, the Creeping Frost will actually creep a little bit towards them. That's one portion of our build. The other is going to be Cold Snap. Now, this is just another cold damage over time ability, but the main thing that we benefit from in Cold Snap is that Cold Snap is going to give us an option to use Bone Chill. What this does is that enemies chilled by supported skills have cold damage taken increased by our chill effect, and we have a ton of that. With these two abilities overlapped, we get a ton of damage taken, a ton of cold damage over time. Now beyond that, we do have a few additional abilities. You might notice that I have on my left click here, we have Steel Skin. This is just an extra little buff of defense defensives, we do have an Arcanist brand. These are very common in my builds, and you'll notice that this Arcanist brand is going to be giving us elemental weakness as well as frostbite. Because we are an occultist, we do have an option of a second curse automatically. Talk more about that in a minute. And then beyond that, we do use our Enduring Cry just to give us a little bit of healing here and there if we need it. We use our Flame Dash as our movement skill, and beyond that, we do have a couple skills in our Trigger Wand. So this wand here, there is a chance that if you're watching this video, some people in my community have been thinking that Trigger Wand might get nerfed because they said they're changing how the veils worked. If Trigger Wand does get nerfed, I will update the POB with something else, so don't worry too much about it. But for the meantime, we have Frost Bomb, Cold Snap, and Storm Brand in here. All three of these abilities are important. Frost Bomb is going to be giving us a reduced life regeneration rate for enemies that are very far from us. It's also going to be giving us our source of cold exposure. Keep in mind that cold exposure does not stack, so if you're trying to use like Hydrosphere or something like that with this, they actually don't stack, so keep that in mind. Frost Bomb is more cold exposure than Hydrosphere is, so I suggest this one over that. The next ability is Cold Snap. This is just an additional Cold Snap that is going to allow us to gain 25% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge when an enemy dies in the skills area. We do have our normal Cold Snap that we use up here, however, we're not going to be casting this constantly. This Cold Snap in our wand is going to give us access to constant Cold Snaps. Now, you can change out this Cold Snap, or you can change out the Frost Bomb for a Frost Shield in one of these slots. That is up to you. You can use it if you like. I personally have not been recently, but that is something that you can do, so keep that in mind. And the last ability is going to be Storm Brand. The reason for this is that we do use Elemental Equilibrium. Elemental Equilibrium says that enemies you hit with elemental damage temporarily get 25% resistance to those elements and minus 50% resistance to other elements. So the idea is that this Storm Brand is going to be consistently hitting for lightning damage every 0.5 seconds. And because our cold damage that we do is damage over time, the Elemental Equilibrium will apply the cold debuff to it when this Storm Brand is going on. So those two things together are going to make it significantly easier for us to do a ton of single target damage. Now you might be saying, but you can't have multiple brands attached to the same target at the same time, and that is true. That is why that when you're going up to the enemy, you're going to want to put your Arcanist brand on, it will cast its curses on the enemy, and then when you're proccing the Storm Brand will over-apply on top of that and start giving us our Elemental Equilibrium. Don't think about it too much, it does work perfectly fine with the setup that you see here. Beyond that, we do have a couple of auras and a couple of skills that we use. We do use Discipline. This is just going to give us some extra energy shield, nothing special about this, and we also use Malevolence. Now you can use Clarity on this build if you have issues, but I do suggest that you just use an Enduring Eternal Mana Flask. But Malevolence is going to give us some skill effect duration, it's going to give us some more damage over time, and Discipline just giving us some energy shield. Our last skill that we're going to be talking about is Vol Righteous Fire. This is one of two cooldowns that we're going to be using. This just gives us a burst of more spell damage as well as our Vol Cold Snap. These two abilities together are just going to give us a burst of damage against bosses. So that is all of the skills that we use in this build. Everything is rather straightforward, there's not much else to go over when it comes to that. Now leveling on this build is extremely straightforward. Early on in the game, you're going to get access to Stormblast Mine. This is going to be obtained at level 1. You can buy this from the vendor. You're going to check down in the path of building down in the description. That's going to have links for everything that you need for all of these leveling abilities. We'll talk more about that later. We're going to be using Stormblast Mine as our main damage ability. This is just going to be our right click ability. It will work all the way up until level 12 where we obtain Creeping Frost. Now before that you will also get access to Frost Bomb at level 4. You can use this for clearing if you want, or you can just save it for when you actually switch over to Creeping Frost as just some extra damage. Now Creeping Frost is going to be our main ability from 12 all the way through the end of the game. You're going to want to give it a couple additional projectiles and it will do significant damage all the way through. You don't have to worry about any Spellslinger stuff, you don't have to worry about anything crazy, you can just self-cast this ability perfectly fine. The other ability that we're going to get is Cold Snap, as I spoke about before. We get this at level 16, this is just going to give us some additional cold damage over time. We can use both of these abilities together. If you really want to, you could even grab Vortex as well. I personally don't like leveling with Vortex, but you could use all three if you really wanted to. I don't think it's worth it. But when you get around level 20, you're going to want to actually craft yourself some wands. Now I do suggest that early on you just pick up some blue wands, any ones that you can find with the correct colors that you're looking for, and hold on to them. Because later on you're actually going to be able to do a vendor recipe that's going to allow you to get some exceptionally better wands than most things that you can find in the game. So the idea is you're going to want a blue wand of any kind. You're going to want to get something with the correct colors that you're looking for, and you're going to sell this with either a white, blue, or yellow resist ring. Now the type of resist that the ring gives you is going to give you that kind of damage. Now I'm going to suggest cold damage just because that's what you're going to be scaling, but what you'll notice is if you use a white ring and an alteration orb, you're going to get a lower level smoldering carved wand. This is going to give you a tier 8, as you can see here. That's going to be a lower tier roll. If you do a blue ring instead, you'll notice that it's going to give you a tier 7 roll, which is a little bit higher. And then last but not least, you're going to be going with a yellow ring, and it's going to give you a tier 6. This is the highest that you can get out of this recipe. Now, what you would do is you would take these 2 wands, and these are going to be prefixes that are on these wands. You can take this, and then you can just craft some elemental resist of some kind on these wands and have some great leveling wands all the way throughout the game. As I said, I do suggest that you put cold damage on them with a yellow sapphire ring, because that's going to be the best damage that you're going to be scaling throughout the game. Now, as I said before with resists, this build is absolutely capable of making it all the way through the game with white gear that you just craft resists on here through the bench. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pick up these transmutation orbs, or you're going to want to sell items to be able to get you transmutation orbs. Because you can just simply take those 2 wands that you crafted, a bunch of white gear, maybe some stuff with life on it, and just craft resists on everything. And you will easily be able to make it through the entirety of the campaign with just that crafted gear, and that's it. Now beyond that, I do want to talk about some of the early strategies that you can use to make currency early on, or early things that you can use to get some of the gear that you're looking for. Now to do this, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay logged into this character because that character is on Standard. And in Standard, I don't have the Atlas trees finished because I haven't played Standard since they put them in. So we're swapping over to a different character. We're going to look at the Atlas trees here. Now, the idea is that early on, the things that you're going to want to look for in this build are going to be cluster jewels. The cold damage over time, large and medium cluster jewels are very, very powerful for this build. So you've got a couple options. What I would say is I would look for the delirium nodes on the tree. They may be in different places. They may be nerfed. I'm not 100% certain yet because that information hasn't come out to us. I will talk about it in the path of building once we do get that information. But for right now, you can either do some of the delirium nodes up in this section that's going to give you just extra layers of delirium, additional reward types. You're mainly just looking on getting extra rewards and extra profit from these deliriums. Now another option that you can do is you can look into some heist nodes, because heists are actually going to give you a pretty decent chance to get delirium rewards. And the main reward that you're looking for out of that is cluster jewels. Heists, I'm talking about like lock picking heists, things that give you currency, things that give you delirium rewards. Those are the main things that you're really going to be looking for early on. This is going to be a great way to just inject a bunch of early currency into your build. And if you can get those early cluster jewel bases, you can actually craft them with some harvest. Meaning that if you go up into Hayward Camlet or wherever else the harvest nodes end up being, you can just do some harvest, roll with just some cold re-roll crafting, and just get some excellent cluster jewels. So ones that I'm talking about, now that I've shown you all of that, we can log back over to the other character here, would be things like a cold cluster jewel that has things like deep chill, widespread destruction. There's going to be specific ones that you can go for in the path of building. And then medium cluster jewels are going to have things like brood for potency or deep chill, things like this that give you cold damage over time, increased effectiveness of cold ailments, and so on and so forth. These are the kind of things that you're going to be looking for, and as I said, there'll be more info in the path of building. So the next thing that I want to go over is gear. This build is insanely easy to gear. I was able to complete all of the content in the game with some very, very simple items. Now keep in mind, you're not going to be able to kill bosses insanely fast with this gear, but this is going to be enough that gets you through all of the content, albeit maybe a little bit slower than a huge DPS build. Now, keep in mind, the only things of note here are going to be a trigger-socketed spells when you use a skill wand, and then this helmet. Beyond that, you can use almost anything that you want, just some random rares with life, resists, anything else that you can get on them. You're going to want a shield with some spell block on it. Try to get some chaos resist. This is a hybrid build, so chaos resistance is very important, which is life and resist and movement speed, life and resists, life and resist, and energy shield. That's all that we're really looking for. Our flasks are very simple. There's nothing special here. If you look on our tree, we just have a couple of simple cluster jewels. We're looking for energy shield, we're looking for life, and we're looking for cold damage over time multiplier. Now, my gear is not min-maxed in any way. You could very easily get a better amulet that has a whole bunch of extra stuff on this. This is just a random amulet I pulled from another character. You could get cold damage over time multiplier. You could get plus a level of cold gems, plus a level of intelligence gems. On your gloves, you could get cold damage over time multiplier and all kinds of other things. There's a ton that you can do to improve the build beyond even what I've done here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the skill tree as well as the leveling skill trees. And to do that, we're going to jump over into Path of Building because it's significantly easier to talk about it over there. So let's go. Well, let's go over the skill tree step by step, starting with the leveling skill tree. So I have made some changes here. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be heading out through spell damage, These nodes over here are mainly for the strength and dexterity. I thought to myself, well, I can get 35 strength and dexterity for 2 points, or I can get 30 strength and dexterity for 2 points. You can get either or, you can get both. The first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be coming out, you'll grab Frostwalker, there's some life and mana over here. We're going to be pathing through this damage and beelining our way over to Elemental Overload. You can grab these strength nodes and dex nodes and these strength nodes and dex nodes as you need them, but just grab them whenever you need them. The next thing we're going to be heading towards is down towards this way. We're going to be grabbing this mana recovery and life over here to grab this life, this damage, and this sanctity node. And at this point is around when you can do your first lab. It's going to be around level 30. The first point that you're going to get is Void Beacon. This is going to make it so that bosses take a little bit more damage from you, and also enemies have less regeneration. This will be more important later on in the actual Atlas when you're fighting the Maven empowered enemies, because this means that they won't be able to regenerate all that life back. Now, the next thing that you're going to be doing in the next section of the skill tree is you're going to be going for Glancing Blows. Glancing Blows is one of our main defensive layers. This is going to double the chance for us to block attacks and spells. Now you do take some extra damage from these blocked hits now, but this very easily gets up to 75% block and 75% spell block. You're also going to take these shield nodes here, and then after you take all of that, you'll be heading up back towards the top of the tree. We'll be moving up through this life and coming over to these cold damage over time nodes, finally reaching Breath of Rime. After that, you're going to head over to here and grab these mana and block nodes here. At this point, you'll be able to do your second ascendancy around level 55, and I suggest that you get Frigid Wake. This is going to give you immunity to chill and freeze, it's going to give you more cold damage, and it's also going to make it so that nearby enemies do less damage to you, and they get frozen and chilled all the time. This is a very powerful defensive and offensive node. The next step that you're going to be is this is where you're going to be getting close to getting into maps. This is from 56 to 70. We're going to start filling out these block and shield spell nodes. We're also going to be moving over towards the right side of the tree and grabbing this life. Now, after we've done this, we will have access to our third ascendancy point, which is going to be Vile Bastion. The reason that you get this is mainly because of the cannot be stunned while you have energy shield portion of it. The regeneration is okay, but honestly, it isn't very great. There's not very many other good choices besides this one, and you're not really going to be able to take advantage of Malediction yet, because you're not really going to be able to do multiple curses at this point in time. Now, you could get that set up if you wanted to with an Arcanist brand and all of that, and you could go Malediction first, but I think stun immunity is pretty important early on. And because Uber Lab is going to be much easier to get a hold of nowadays, because you're going to be able to just take an offering and insert it into the map device to be able to open up a new trial, it's going to be way easier to get our Uber Lab, hopefully. Now at this point, you're going to be reaching the end of the campaign, and you're going to want to do your skill point quest. And when you do these skill point quests, you're going to be heading over to the right side of the tree. We're going to be grabbing this life and energy shield, as well as these block nodes here for arcane swiftness, and these cold damage over time nodes here. So I tend to like to do my skill point quests at the very end of the campaign. Just run it back and go all through them real quick. Much simpler to do them towards the end of the campaign. And then once you hit the end game, you can actually start moving towards some cluster jewels and some other things. Once you start hitting this point, you can move your tree around a little bit. You can start doing 2 sets of cluster jewels here like this, or you can do the 1 large and the 2 medium cluster jewels as I said before. And you're going to be getting your final ascendancy point, which is going to be Malediction. Malediction is going to be giving you an additional curse. Enemies you curse have Malediction, which means that they deal 10% reduced damage and take 10% increased damage. It's a very good node. It's very, very powerful. Ever since they updated the pathing so that you can just go straight for Malediction, the Occultist got a significant buff. And then in the final tree, you are able to just go to this full tree with all of the cluster jewels here. A couple points have been moved around, and keep in mind, there are alternate versions of these endgame skill trees. You can do the one with no clusters if you don't have access to them. That takes some additional life over here and over here and over here, and also takes some additional cold damage nodes up here at the top. And there is a full life version of this tree, which also does have a life section of gear. This is a very different tree that takes divine flesh and uses a bunch of different nodes to get a significant more amount of life. It goes up with some pretty high chaos resistance, among some other things. So you can check those out if you'd like, but the standard version of the build is what I would suggest for the most part. Now, beyond all of that, Path of Building does have some extra things that you can check out in here. I do spend quite a bit of time on these Path of Buildings. They do have quite a bit of information in them. You can go into the skills section here, and you'll see that there is a section for leveling. You can use Stormblast Mine and Orb of Storms early on for leveling if you like, and then swapping into Creeping Frost. You've got the movement skills, the auras here, and then we have all of our in-game links and everything that you can find in here. Beyond that, we do have multiple item sets. There's the life version, there's the budget items that you saw in game, as well as some expensive expensive items that will increase your damage pretty significantly. In the configuration, make sure that you take a look in here and change anything depending on what's going on with your character, just so that you can get an accurate account on your damage. And that's going to be most of the information that you need from Path of Building. The notes here have a ton of information in them. If you're lacking some kind of information, check in the Path of Building and check here in the notes. Question might be answered there. And that is going to be the end of the guide. Now remember, if you have any further questions beyond anything that's in this video and beyond anything that's in the Path of Building, make sure that you check out my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/bigducks. I'm going to be live Monday through Friday for the foreseeable future. I'm also probably going to be live more often than that around League start time. If I'm not live or I'm not able to answer your question, make sure that you join my Discord. Link is down in the description. It's the best place to get help from my community. And beyond that, this is a very, very powerful League start build. I hope that you give it a try, but remember, if this one didn't do it for you and you didn't really like the idea of this build, go check out the playlist. There's going to be other League start builds that I will give you access to. I'm going to do 5 for every single league, so go check out one of those. And remember guys, if you enjoy my content, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in 3.14 Ultimatum League.